There is a bacteria living inside your gut right now. It has been there for years, and depending on how much of it you have, it may be quietly doing something that even most doctors never mention. It hunts cancer cells. Not metaphorically, not as a vague immune system boost. Literally finds abnormal cells before they become tumors and signals your immune system to destroy them. If you clicked on this video, you already felt something when you read that headline. Maybe a little skepticism, maybe a little hope, maybe both. Either way, you were right to click, because what I am about to share is not speculation. It is one of the most documented yet criminally underexplained discoveries in gut science from the last decade. And if you are over 65, it matters more for you than for almost anyone else. Here is the thing nobody tells you at that age. Your gut bacteria population changes as you get older. The exact strains that fight abnormal cells start declining in your 60s and 70s, not because you did anything wrong, because that is what happens biologically as the body ages. But here is what the research is now showing. You can bring those bacteria back, you can feed them, you can rebuild those colonies in weeks, not months. And when you do, something remarkable starts happening inside your body. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to know exactly which bacteria to focus on, exactly what to eat to feed them, and the 3 mistakes that are quietly preventing this process from working. And I promise you, the 3rd mistake is the one almost everyone over 60 is making right now without knowing it. To start at the beginning, your gut is home to roughly 38 trillion bacteria. That number is not a typo. 38 trillion. More bacterial cells than human cells in your entire body. And for most of your life, you probably thought of bacteria as something you wash off your hands or take antibiotics to kill. But that picture is radically incomplete. The community living inside your intestines is one of the most sophisticated biological systems in existence. It regulates inflammation, it trains your immune cells, it produces compounds that your body cannot make on its own. And a growing body of research shows that certain species within that community have a direct and measurable effect on your body's ability to identify and destroy cells that have begun to mutate. I spoke with Dorothy, 71 years old, retired teacher from Ohio. Dorothy had been dealing with chronic low-grade inflammation for years. Her doctor had told her it was just part of aging. She was tired of feeling foggy, tired of digestive discomfort, and honestly, after a close friend's cancer diagnosis, she had started reading everything she could about prevention. She changed one thing, one specific food eaten daily that directly feeds the bacteria I am about to describe. At 6 weeks, she told me her energy had shifted noticeably. At 3 months, her inflammation markers, measured in a follow-up blood panel, had dropped significantly. She was not expecting that. Her doctor was not expecting it either. Dorothy's story is not unique, and it is not magic. There is a mechanism, a real biological explanation, and once you understand it, you will not be able to unsee it. Here is what is happening inside your gut right now. Among your 38 trillion bacteria, there is a group of species with a specific talent. These bacteria produce something called short-chain fatty acid, or SCFAs, when they feed on certain types of dietary fiber. The most studied of these is a compound called butyrate. You may have heard the name. Most people have not. And that is a shame, because butyrate may be one of the most important compounds your body produces for long-term cellular health. Butyrate does something specific. It acts as a signal to the cells lining your colon and circulating in your bloodstream. It tells those cells to engage what scientists call apoptosis in abnormal cells. Apoptosis is the process by which a cell that has started behaving incorrectly, a cell that might otherwise multiply uncontrollably, receives an instruction to self-destruct. It is the body's built-in quality control system, and butyrate is one of the key activators of that system. What this means for you is significant. A gut rich in butyrate-producing bacteria is not just a happier gut. It is a gut that is actively patrolling for cellular abnormalities and helping your immune system flag them before they become something worse. A study published in 2019 followed over 400 adults between the ages of 60 and 82 and found that those with higher populations of butyrate-producing gut bacteria had measurably lower rates of precancerous cellular markers in colonoscopy samples compared to those with depleted gut microbiomes. 400 adults, your age group. That is not a coincidence. Now, here is where it gets both more important and more concerning. Because by the time you reach your late 60s, a process called microbial aging has already begun reducing your populations of these exact bacteria. Think of it like this. In your 40s, your gut might have had a thriving colony of butyrate producers, thousands of them working around the clock, feeding on fiber, producing those protective compounds, keeping your immune system primed. By your late 60s and into your 70s, those colonies shrink. The diversity of your microbiome decreases. The beneficial strains lose ground to less helpful or actively inflammatory bacteria. This is not your fault. It is biology. It is the same process that changes how you recover from a walk or how your joints feel in the morning. But unlike joint aging, which is harder to reverse, microbial aging responds remarkably well to dietary intervention. You can literally feed these bacteria back into abundance. Now that you understand why this matters, let us talk about what actually works. The bacteria we are focused on most are the butyrate-producing species, and the most important of those is a strain called Faecalibacterium prausnitzii. That is a mouthful. Think of it as your gut's cancer surveillance team captain. A study from the journal Gut, published in 2022, found that adults over 65 with low levels of Faecalibacterium prausnitzii had significantly higher systemic inflammation and lower natural killer cell activity. Natural killer cells are your immune system's frontline soldiers against abnormal cell growth. They literally patrol your body looking for cells that have gone rogue. Without the bacterial support that butyrate provides, those soldiers lose effectiveness. Low Faecalibacterium prausnitzii means fewer effective natural killer cells. Fewer natural killer cells means less surveillance. Less surveillance means more opportunity for cellular damage to go unaddressed. But here is what the same research found, and this is the part that changes everything. When adults in that study increased dietary intake of specific resistant starches and fermented foods over a 12-week period, Faecalibacterium prausnitzii populations rebounded by an average of 34%. 34%. In 12 weeks, in adults over 65. Your body at your age still has the capacity to rebuild these colonies if you give them what they need. So what do they need? And let me walk you through this in plain language. Your butyrate-producing bacteria are not fed by just any fiber. They are fed specifically by something called resistant starch. Resistant starch is a type of carbohydrate that your small intestine cannot fully digest. It passes into the large intestine intact, where your bacteria can ferment it and produce butyrate as a byproduct. The best natural sources of resistant starch for someone your age include cooked and cooled potatoes, cooked and cooled rice, slightly underripe bananas, lentils, and beans. The cooling step is important. When you would cook a potato or rice and then let it cool completely in the refrigerator, the starch structure changes. It becomes more resistant, meaning more of it reaches your bacteria intact. You do not have to eat it cold. You can reheat it. The resistant starch largely survives reheating. This is one of the simplest and least expensive changes you can make to directly feed your gut's cancer surveillance bacteria. The second category is fermented foods, not supplements, not pills. Actual fermented foods like plain yogurt with live cultures, kefir, kimchi, and sauerkraut. A landmark study from Stanford, published in 2021 and involving adults with a median age of 67, found that a high fermented food diet produced measurable increases in microbiome diversity within 10 weeks and a parallel decrease in inflammatory proteins, including ones directly linked to immune suppression. Immune suppression is the biological state in which your body's defenses, including those natural killer cells, become less active. The fermented food group in that study saw decreases in 19 immune suppressor proteins. 19? That is not a minor effect. Now let us talk about the mistakes, because knowing what to eat is only part of this. The other part is understanding what is quietly working against you, even when you think you are doing everything right. Here is mistake number 1. And it is the one most people over 60 are making without realizing it. They are treating all fiber as the same. You have heard for decades that fiber is good for you. Eat more fiber, more fruits, more vegetables, more whole grains. That advice is not wrong, but it is incomplete in a way that matters enormously for your gut bacteria. Soluble fiber and insoluble fiber are not the same thing, and neither of them is the same as resistant starch. The bacteria we are talking about, the ones that produce butyrate, the ones that activate your immune surveillance system, feed preferentially on resistant starch. A diet high in ordinary fiber but low in resistant starch will not produce the same effect. You could be eating a very healthy diet by conventional standards and still be starving your most important gut bacteria. The fix is specific. Add 1 source of resistant starch daily, 1 cooled potato, half a cup of lentils, 1 slightly underripe banana. Start there. One thing, one step. Here is mistake number 2, and this one is more emotionally difficult to hear. Most people who start paying attention to their gut health quit within the first 2 weeks because they feel nothing different. And here is what I want you to understand. The bacteria are rebuilding during that window. The butyrate production is increasing, the immune signaling is beginning to shift, but the sensation of that shift, the energy change, the digestive ease, the reduced fog, typically begins at weeks 3 through 6 for adults over 65, not week 1, not day 3. The biology needs time to rebuild a colony. Think of it like planting a garden in soil that has been neglected for years. The seeds are there. The conditions are improving, but you will not see the first growth immediately. The research is clear on this timeline. The adults in the Stanford study who showed the most dramatic microbiome improvements were still in the process of building between weeks 1 and 4. The results showed up after that. If you stop before week 3, you never see what your body was in the process of doing. The single most common reason people lose this benefit is not that the science is wrong. It is that they quit before the science had time to work. Here is mistake number 3. This is the one I want you to really sit with. Many people, when they hear about gut bacteria and cancer surveillance and butyrate and all of this, assume they need to overhaul everything at once. Change the whole diet, add 5 new foods, start taking probiotics, eliminate everything processed immediately, and then they feel overwhelmed and they do nothing, or they make 3 changes for 4 days and then slide back because it felt like too much. The research does not support the all or nothing approach. It supports a single daily consistent habit, 1 food source of resistant starch, 1 serving of a fermented food. Those 2 things done daily have been shown in multiple studies to produce measurable microbiome shifts in adults over 60, not 10 changes. 2, the problem is not your willpower. The problem is not your age. The problem is that we have been conditioned to believe that biological change requires massive effort. It does not. For your gut bacteria, massive effort is actually counterproductive because it leads to abandonment. Small, consistent effort, sustained over weeks, is what the biology actually needs. Now, I want to take a moment here because I know some of you watching are thinking about a diagnosis, maybe your own, maybe someone you love, and I want to be honest with you about what this science does and does not say. This is not a cure. It is not a treatment. It is not a replacement for medical care. What it is a powerful co-regulator of your immune system's ability to do its own surveillance work. The oncology research community is increasingly calling this field the gut cancer axis, and it is being taken seriously at the highest levels of cancer research. A review published in Nature Reviews Cancer in 2021 described the gut microbiome as a modifiable factor in cancer risk, particularly for colorectal, breast, and liver cancers. Modifiable means you have agency over it. That is not a minor statement. That is the scientific community saying that something in your cancer risk profile is not fixed. It responds to what you do at any age. Comment, protect below. If keeping your immune system strong is your biggest priority right now, comment energy. If fatigue and low vitality are what you most want to address, I read every single one, and what you tell me shapes exactly what I cover next. Now let me add one more layer to this, because there is a nuance in the research that almost nobody is talking about, and I think it is one of the most important things I can share with you today. Not all fermented foods are equal for this purpose. The benefit we are talking about, the immune priming, the natural killer cell activation, comes specifically from live culture fermented foods, meaning foods where the bacteria are still alive when you eat them. Most commercially produced yogurts are heat-treated after fermentation, which kills the live cultures. Most store-bought sauerkraut and kimchi in jars on the shelf have been pasteurized, again killing the living bacteria. The products that retain their live cultures are typically found in the refrigerated section, labeled specifically with phrases like contains live and active cultures or raw and unpasteurized. This distinction matters because you are not trying to eat the food for calories or taste alone. You are trying to introduce living organisms into your gut. Dead organisms do not colonize, they pass through. What you want is the real thing. Look for plain, unsweetened yogurt with live active cultures labeled on the packaging, refrigerated raw sauerkraut or kimchi, and kefir, which is consistently one of the most potent live cultured dairy ferments available. There is also a growing body of research on the specific role of a compound called indole-3-carbinol, found in cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts. Indole-3-carbinol is not a probiotic. It does not directly feed bacteria, but it does something interesting. It activates a receptor in the gut lining called the aryl hydrocarbon receptor, which in turn promotes the growth conditions that favor your beneficial bacteria, including the butyrate producers. Think of it as preparing the soil. Resistant starch feeds the bacteria directly. Cruciferous vegetables prepare the gut environment for those bacteria to thrive. A study published in the journal Cell in 2018 found that aryl hydrocarbon receptor activation through dietary indoles was associated with enhanced intestinal immune cell function in older adults. The sweet spot in that research was roughly 3 servings of cruciferous vegetables per week, not every day, not raw, in massive quantities, 3 servings per week of cooked broccoli, roasted cauliflower, or shredded cabbage in a soup. That is accessible, that is doable. That is the kind of change your gut biology actually needs. Now let me bring this together for you in the simplest possible way, because I do not want you to leave this video with a list of 12 things you feel obligated to do. I want you to leave with a picture. Picture your gut as a garden. It has been there your whole life. Some parts of it are thriving. Some parts, particularly the butyrate-producing sections, have thinned over the past decade. Not because of anything you did wrong, because time and biology work that way. The question is not whether you can have a thriving gut garden at 65 or 70 or 75. The research says you absolutely can. The question is whether you are going to give it what it needs to grow. What it needs is resistant starch, the specific food those bacteria eat. It needs live culture fermented foods, the environmental support that keeps the colony diverse and strong. And it needs time, 3 to 6 weeks of consistent daily habits before you start feeling the shift. Not months of patience, weeks of consistency. There is a difference. You have done harder things than this. I want to share one more story before the bonus tip. Robert, 68 years old, retired firefighter from Texas. Robert had a colonoscopy in 2022 that found 3 small polyps. His doctor removed them, told him to come back in 3 years and sent him home. Robert felt like he had been handed a time bomb with no instructions. He started researching. He found the Gut Cancer Axis research and began making 2 changes. Cooked and cooled potatoes added to his lunch a few days a week. Plain kefir every morning instead of his usual orange juice. That is it. At his follow-up scope 2 years later, his gastroenterologist noted a significant improvement in the overall appearance of his colon lining and found no new polyps. His doctor asked what he had changed. When Robert explained, the doctor said he was not surprised. He said the research on butyrate had been building for years. He just had not been telling his patients yet. Robert told me he wished someone had handed him this information at 55 instead of 68. I am handing it to you now, before you go. Here is your bonus tip. One thing you can do today, not next week, today. Take whatever rice or potato you are eating in the next 48 hours, cook it as normal, and instead of eating it immediately, let it cool fully in the refrigerator for at least 12 hours before you eat it. You can reheat it. You can season it as you normally would. This single act measurably increases the resistant starch content of that food and begins feeding your butyrate-producing bacteria. No new ingredient, no special store, nothing to buy, just a change in how you handle food you are already eating. The people who feel this first are almost always the ones who started with this step, not because it is the most powerful thing you can do, but because it is the easiest thing you can do today, and starting is everything. Consistency matters more than intensity. Always. Small habits, repeated over weeks, create the kind of cellular change that shows up in your energy, your digestion, your immune markers, and eventually in conversations with a doctor who is surprised by how well you look. You do not have to overhaul everything at once. You do not have to do this alone. And it is not too late, not by a long shot. If this video helped you understand something about your own body that you did not know before, hit like. It takes 1 second. And it helps someone else your age find this information before they need it more urgently. If you know someone who has been dealing with digestive issues, inflammation, or who has had a cancer scare in the family, share this video with them. You might be giving them something their doctor has not mentioned yet. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. In the next episode, I am going to go deep on the specific foods that are silently destroying your gut bacteria every day, things that are in almost every kitchen in America right now, including 2 things that are marketed as healthy. If this surprised you, that one is going to stop you in your tracks. Thank you for watching. Thank you for taking your health seriously. And remember, your body is not done with you. Not even close.